For some stories, you just got to talk about it in black and white. Dateline, September 2025. Russian drones are on the march, crossing over the Polish border as Allied forces in Europe ready their response. Here at home, Chancellor Trump springs into action, performing his terrifying war dance. Sorry, ladies, he's swollen.
But there was one performance this year that stunned me. There was nothing good about it, but it was effective and it did its job. It made its intended audience laugh. When the person asking to sit in the most respected seat in our country imitated a disabled reporter, someone he outranked in privilege, power, and the capacity.
Stephen Colbert and Meryl Streep attack Donald Trump in completely different ways, but together they're a force. Colbert relies on sharp wit, quick precision, and playful takedowns, while Streep uses calm authority and refined delivery, proving she can command attention without raising her voice. Side by side, they strip away Trump's inflated image, showing the fragile truth behind the bluster. What's left isn't strength, but a parody warning about ego pushed too far.
Today, I gotta say this, today Donald Trump's horoscope should have warned him he'd have a surprise run-in with a long-lost pervert, because the story of his disturbing friendship with Jeffrey Epstein keeps getting more. Earlier this summer, the Wall Street Journal reported that back in 2003, Trump contributed to a book for Epstein's 50th birthday, and the letter he wrote was a Picasso of...
If we live through this precarious moment, if his catastrophic instinct to retaliate doesn't lead us to nuclear winter, we will have much to thank this president for, because he will have woken us up to how fragile freedom...
Colbert kicks things off by likening Trump's career to a blooper reel disguised as success. From failing casinos to branding flops, each achievement feels less like history and more like a running joke. Under Colbert's lens, Trump's victories turn into proof of disorder. He calls the presidency the worst casting choice ever, putting a man built on selling illusions in charge of real responsibility. The result is both hilarious and painfully tragic.
Thankfully, with Europe on the brink of war, America has a statesman in office who can reassure the world with a steady hand and calming words. Today he posted, "What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go." I can't believe Russia would dare take an aggressive action like this after Trump laid down a clear...
Streep steps in like she's dissecting a stage character, delivering her critique with quiet precision that cuts deep. She points out the nervous ticks, the insecurity behind non-stop bragging, the desperation in overdone gestures, and the emptiness beneath his constant use of superlatives. To her, Trump isn't a leader, but a caricature lost in his own script. Her delivery highlights the absurdity of mistaking performance for leadership, because while performance is art in her world, for Trump it turned into a way to survive.
It kind of broke my heart when I saw it, and I still can't get it out of my head because it wasn't in a movie. It was real life. And this instinct to humiliate by someone powerful, it filters down into everybody's life because it kind of gives permission for other people to do the same thing. Disrespect invites disrespect. Violence incites violence. When the powerful use their position to bully others, we all lose. And we have to remind each other of the privilege and the responsibility of the active empathy.
Colbert shifts to Trump's uneasy relationship with truth, pointing out how fact-checkers practically became their own industry, trying to keep up with him. He ridicules the way Trump spun whole stories, likening it to a novelist who skips editing and releases rough drafts as official policy. The jokes cut deep. Trump didn't just twist facts. He created a world where reality bent to his ego. Colbert highlights how that constant improvisation couldn't hold up, and how a presidency built on exaggeration eventually crumbled under real-world pressure.
There's one bit of good news, and strangely, it comes from Washington, D.C., because today, right? Today marks the end of Trump's executive order taking control of the city. This means the police force is returned to the city's hands, and just in time, because Trump's hands have begun to smell a little gamey. Trump claims his 30-day fascist makeover reduced crime by 100%.
Streep builds on this by pointing out that Trump's speeches lack subtlety, leaning on loudness and repetition instead of depth. She contrasts it with the craft of acting, where real skill means showing layers, truth, and contradiction. Trump, she says, offers the opposite of flat, one-note performance shouted into a microphone. She highlights the tragic comedy of a man who confuses noise with strength and presence with authority. Her critique stings because it comes from someone who understands true performance, and by those standards, Trump's stage act falls apart.
And so it came down to her. She was one of the only women who was in business at that time, and she ran the paper only because she inherited it.
It's funny because I feel like if this movie had come out 2 years ago, our reaction would be, oh, it's unthinkable that a newspaper wouldn't print this information because the president told them not to. But now it doesn't seem so unthinkable anymore. And is that a total coincidence that this movie came out now and was made during this administration?
Well, I think the assault on the press and freedom of the press and the attempt to, by government to shut down a story is something that's risen over and over again since, Brave New World. But
since this weekend.
Colbert turns to Trump's rallies, portraying them as traveling comedy shows where the same lines were stretched and repeated until they became self-parody. The crowd wasn't getting strategy or solutions, just the verbal equivalent of reheated leftovers. The real punchline, Trump acted like a performer hooked on applause, mistaking cheers for policy approval. Colbert frames him as a comedian unaware that he himself is the joke. Streep sharpens this by stripping away the spectacle. She asks what's left once the noise and lights fade, and her answer is stark only fear of silence. She likens Trump's craving for constant validation to an insecure actor who doubts their talent, without audience approval. To her, the rallies weren't shows of strength, but signs of fragility. A man desperate to be seen is never truly powerful. Colbert then attacks Trump's contradictions, mocking his ability to flip positions overnight. He compares it to bad improv, where the actor forgets the setup. Every reversal, denial, and rebranding becomes fuel for Colbert's cutting jokes, exposing how Trump sold himself as a man of certainty, but governed through chaos and inconsistency.
According to the Journal's reporting, his note was framed by a hand-drawn outline of a naked woman and featured what appeared to be the future president's signature as a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair. But wait, there's more. The note read in part, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret."
Streep uses her calm authority to highlight how empty Trump's sense of importance really is. She contrasts his loud theatrics with true presence, the kind that comes from authenticity, not spectacle. Trump, she argues, leans on exaggeration, mistaking force for persuasion. Her critique lands because she doesn't need to shout. She simply lets his hollowness show itself. Colbert sharpens the roast by mocking Trump's obsession with legacy. He ridicules the fantasy of statues, airports, and history books honoring his name, instead painting a future where textbooks remember him less for achievement and more for disaster. His comedy is merciless. Trump dreamed of greatness, but secured mockery, leaving behind only a monument of chaos. Streep pushes the point further, reminding us that history values substance over spectacle. Trump confused visibility with permanence, never seeing that the brightest flames die out the quickest. His hunger to carve his name into history has ensured he's remembered for all the wrong reasons. She delivers the thought with finality. History doesn't hold on to noise. It holds on to meaning, and Trump's noise will eventually fade.
Well, meanwhile, Donald Trump got the Meryl Streep treatment this week. Not necessarily a good thing. Take a look. Monday, she put on a spray tan, a belly of a sort, and a big red tie to deliver a Trump impression.
Russia, my Shakespeare, and the women you will bow with the wife of the British ambassador.
Ambassador compares Trump's governing style to a reality TV show stretched into politics, where every crisis was a cliffhanger. every scandal a plot twist, and every press briefing just a trailer for the next episode. But unlike TV, the consequences were real. Colbert ridicules the absurdity of running a country as if it were entertainment, mocking the confusion of spectacle for stability. For Streep, that's the true tragedy a man given history's most serious role who insisted on playing it like a reality show. Together, they dismantle Trump's obsession with looking strong. Colbert points out that the louder his declarations of toughness, the weaker the truth behind them. Every boast of dominance only revealed insecurity. Streep sharpens the critique, noting that real strength doesn't need advertising. His non-stop proclamations didn't show confidence, but fear of being exposed. The joint attack cuts deep, laying bare the fragility hiding behind the facade.
On Friday, Donald Trump signed an executive order to rebrand the Defense Department as the Department of War. Ooh, a rebrand. You know what that means? The Pentagon is getting bangs. It's just fresh.
Colbert closes by mocking Trump's refusal to fade from the spotlight. Even after leaving office, he clings to every microphone as if silence itself would erase him. The image is darkly funny, a man once at the peak of power, now desperate for any scrap of attention, unable to exit the stage with dignity. Colbert's jokes land because they capture the raw neediness behind the bluster. Streep delivers the final blow with quiet certainty. She reminds us the story isn't finished, not because history demands more, but because Trump won't let it end. Every attempt to claw back relevance writes the next act of the comedy. Each grasp for recognition becomes new material. In the end, Colbert and Streep don't need a closing punchline. Trump provides it himself, as history keeps recording until the curtain finally drops.
Trump denied everything and sued the Wall Street Journal for $20 billion, calling the letter, you guys were a little late. Now, calling the letter non-existent. Turns out existent, because yesterday, the House Oversight Committee released it, and whoops-a-puby. That sure as hell looks legit. It's directly from the Jeffrey Epstein estate. It's exactly what the Wall Street Journal reported, and the signature identically matches a bunch of ones from the same era. And you know what they say, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, that duck should not be allowed within 300 yards of a school.
Colbert circles back to Trump's obsession with appearances, ripping into his fixation on crowd sizes, inflated attendance claims, and staged photos meant to project popularity. He jokes that Trump measured success not through results or policy, but by how tightly arenas were packed. The humor hits because it's absurd a presidency judged by headcount instead of outcomes. Colbert seals the roast by casting him as a carnival barker who mistakes foot traffic for legacy. Streep adds to this by pointing out that real influence doesn't need constant reminders. The tragedy, she says, is that Trump confused nostalgia with relevance, never realizing that repeating the same lines only revealed his lack of new ideas. Colbert then skewers Trump's addiction to superlatives. Everything had to be the biggest, the best, the most. He mocks it as verbal inflation, like a clearance sale where every adjective is oversized. The punchline cuts deep. When everything is declared the greatest, nothing actually means anything. In the end, Colbert exposes how Trump's empty bravado collapsed under its own weight, leaving behind only echoes of hollow boasts.
Trump explained his reasoning for this unreasonable decision.
We've been talking about this Department of War. So we won the First World War, we won the Second World War, we won everything before that and in between, and then we decided to go woke and we changed the name to Department of Defense.
Yes, we went woke. Remember, they changed it to the Department of Defense during the Truman administration. You know, that famously woke era. After all, they did drop the atomic bomb from the Enola Gay.
Streep turns to Trump's uneasy relationship with culture, mocking his constant need for validation from spaces he never understood. She points out his awkward attempts to connect with celebrities, athletes, and artists who clearly wanted nothing to do with him. For her, it exposes the insecurity of a man desperate for inclusion but incapable of handling criticism. The humor stings because it paints him an outsider trying to buy his way into circles where respect can't be purchased. Colbert then tackles the chaos of Trump's revolving door administration, comparing it to a sitcom that couldn't hold onto its cast. Every firing, resignation, and scandal became another subplot in the ongoing farce. He drives the joke home by portraying Trump not as a leader, but as a hapless director who couldn't stop his production from falling apart behind the scenes. Streep follows with a sharp critique of Trump's treatment of both allies and rivals. She notes how loyalty was always demanded but never returned, how flattery was rewarded but criticism punished. Her observation cuts deep. This isn't the behavior of a strong leader, but of a fragile performer who can't face anything less than glowing reviews. She closes by reminding us that true strength welcomes accountability, something Trump avoided at every step.
Despite all this evidence, Trump's allies are pretending that there's no evidence. Here's Speaker Mike Johnson today.
Mr. Speaker, do you think the Trump birthday note to Epstein is real?
I don't. They say it's not.
I don't think it's real. They say it's not. While I have you seen the president's new clothes? He's hired the finest tailor in all the kingdom. Now he has gorgeous robes.
Colbert sharpens his attack by ridiculing Trump's endless grievances. Every setback became persecution, every challenge a conspiracy. He paints him as a man addicted to victimhood, thriving only when the world seems against him. The bitter irony, Colbert jokes, is that Trump longed to be remembered as a conqueror. Yet his story reads more like the diary of someone convinced others kept stealing his spotlight. Streep closes this segment with calm precision, focusing on Trump's refusal to leave the stage with dignity. She notes that history often honors leaders who know when to step aside, but Trump's desperation ensures he'll be remembered for clinging too long. She frames it as the saddest encore an actor bowing long after the applause has ended, chasing an audience that's already gone. The image lingers, a man unable to let go. Together, they show how the spectacle never truly ends. Each new outburst, scandal, or contradiction becomes fresh material, keeping the comedy alive. Neither Colbert nor Streep offers a final line because there can't be one. Trump himself guarantees the continuation, feeding satire faster than it can keep up. The roast doesn't close, it lingers, waiting for the next act, the next mistake, the next unraveling of a performance that drags on only because the star refuses to exit.